And we are back. Welcome to a brand new tactics video on the channel. Now, we've already done 2 of these videos, so make sure to check those out before you watch this one. But today we are going to talk about how to deal with people that play 5 at the back.
You dirty rat!
This is becoming a lot more popular, I've seen over the last couple of weeks, and I did warn that this would happen in my part 2 video, but to me, the solution is both risky, but also relatively simple. And that is, if they're going to play 5 at the back, we're going to play 6 up front.
You're mad.
Thank goodness for that, because if I wasn't, this would probably never work.
And the way we're going to do this is by playing the 4-2-2-2, as you can see on your screen here. Now, there are multiple ways you can do this. You can do this with a 4-2-2-2. You can do this with a 4-4-2 second variation, or you could even do it with a normal 4-4-2 or a 4-2-4. But for me, the standard 4-2-2-2 is the best way of doing this, just because of the actual player positions, which allow you to set a certain amount of player instructions. So we'll start off with the tactics, and the tactics are as this. Rather than going for the press after possession loss, I am actually going with balanced in the 4-2-2-2. The reason for this is because we're already going to have so many people forward anyway. If we then go for a press on top of that, we're going to leave ourselves far too exposed at the back. So I go for balance, but I do keep the depth at 72. So you have those auto offsides and you can keep your team high, but because we're not pressing after possession loss, it does allow the ability to have the team come back. If you're in a desperate situation, by all means, go for pressure after possession loss, go for pressure on heavy touch. But this is for situations whereby you've clocked that your opponent is playing a 5-back and you just want to go into a setup where you can be on top, but not leaving yourself too exposed. So for me, it's balanced, it's 45 width, and it is 72 depth. It's when it comes to the build-up play where it is completely different to all my other normal tactics. As you know, I am someone who likes to play possession. However, against a 5 at the back, you can play possession, but you're either going to end up in a stalemate or you're going to have to really be patient to try and break that opponent down. But realistically, as your players keep dropping in short, you're just going to end up roaming around the edge of the penalty area without ever getting through. So for me, I've gone for balance, and this time I've gone for direct passing. The reason we're doing this is if we bring up the graphic of how the side would look compared to our opponent's 5-back, there are going to be opportunities when you initially get the ball back to hit your opponent in behind. And most people that play 5 at the back have their fullbacks pushed up high. So what will happen is if you get that ball back, if you're playing with direct passing, you should be able to feed that ball into your 2 cams and you'll actually have a 4-on-3 situation initially. So that's why we're going for direct passing. If that initial counter-attack doesn't work, you will see in the player instructions shortly how we are then going to utilize other players in the team to make it a 6 up front versus that 5 at the back. As it comes to the actual width itself, I've gone for 40. That will allow us to create even more space in the wide areas for our fullbacks, which again we will touch on shortly. But the reason we're going for 40 width is because we want our forward line, i.e. our 2 strikers and our 2 cams, we want them penetrating the spaces between our opposing centre-backs and the gap between the full-backs and the centre-backs. So basically we want that line of 4 fully penetrating through all of those gaps in our opponent's defence, which will then leave the space for our full-backs to get in behind round the outside. Players in the box I have set to 7. Basically, again, we just want as many people piling in that box as possible to try and create those shooting opportunities, and then corners and free kicks we just set as you would like. I obviously have my corners set to 1. Make sure to check out the corner tutorial, and free kicks I also have set to 1 because I just don't really know how to do free kicks at the moment. So I'm just leaving it at 1 because it just makes it the least chance of being counter-attacked. As for the player instructions, and I'm going to stress this immediately, the most important players in this setup are not the front 4. The most important players in this setup are what I would then call the second row, i.e. the 2 CDMs and the 2 fullbacks. They are the most important players in this team, and I will start with my player instructions for them. For the fullbacks, I have them on balanced and overlap. I don't have them on get forward because when they're on balance, they just get forward anyway. And if you have them on get forward, they're going to overdo it, and we don't want them overdoing it. So the fullbacks are set to balanced and overlap. And then the 2 holding midfielders are set to cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking, cover centre, and deep lying playmaker. The So basically what that means is when you get the ball back, when you win it in transition, those two holding midfielders are going to drop in for you so then they can get on the ball. And the whole purpose of these two players is to drill the ball up into your front four, because your front four is going to be trying to pin back that line of five. So you want to get these two holding midfielders on the ball as quickly as possible and get that ball into your front four. That is why they are set to deep lying playmaker. And on top of that, I cannot stress this enough, this will work better if you are now utilizing play styles. So on your holding midfielders, if you can have as many of the incisive pass, the pinged pass, and the long pass as possible, you are going to get a lot more opportunities using this setup, because essentially those play styles allow these holding midfielders to firstly hit those passes more accurately, but also give your forward line a better chance of controlling them. And that's especially where the pinged pass comes into use, because if you're playing direct passing with ping pass or ping pass plus, when you hit those driven passes into your forwards, they're then going to be able to have a better chance of controlling it, which will allow you to start setting up your attacks. As for the fullbacks, what you really want on these players is the whipped pass or whipped pass plus, i.e. the crossing one where you're putting those balls into the box, as well as having relentless, because boy are these two fullbacks going to be putting in a lot of work bombing up and down that outside. So those are the ones you want to be looking for in terms of these players. And essentially how it works is you get the ball, you feed it into those two CDMs, you play it up to your forwards, and then from there you can either try and work it between your forwards, but essentially because we're on such a narrow width, we are then going to try and force those defenders into tight areas, allowing you to then feed your fullbacks round the outside, who can then get a 6-on-5 in the attack to then still enable you to get in behind, put some crosses into the box with the whipped pass traits, and then have your forwards in the positions to score the goals. So with that said, when it comes to the forward line, you will see that I have my cams on get into the box, free roam, and come back on defence, because we still want them to help out defensively. And we have the forwards set to stay central, and that is it. Do not put your forwards on get in behind. The reason for this is when you've got your CDMs peeling off the front and you then try and feed it into your forwards, if they're on get in behind, it's just not going to work. Our opposition is playing 5 at the back with very narrow gaps between that back 5. If your forwards are set to get in behind, they're going to potentially run through that gap, but more likely they're either going to run into a defender, or if they do get through that gap, when you try and hit a ball to them, it's going to get cut out because that gap is just not there. So you have your forward set on mixed, so they can drop off occasionally to receive the ball from the holding midfielders, but occasionally they then can make that spin in behind, especially when you're then playing the ball out wide. So those are the tactics, those are the instructions, these are the play styles that I think you need to be utilising when it comes to using this style of play. Let's see a few examples of how it works in action.
Okay, let's go.
Now, the majority of these clips are going to come from my champ stream from the weekend. We went 17-3 this weekend, which is my best finish so far of the year. And playing 4-2-2 against people that played 5 at the back were a big part of that. And you can see here already what our opponent is trying to do. They've got their fullbacks pressed really high up, and we win the ball back here with our CDMs. Play it in quickly to our cams, and we're away. Pirlo is now in behind the fullback. He can feed it into Van Nistelrooy, and this is where we talk about penetrating the gaps. Van Nistelrooy's in the space in between the players, and how about this finish? Ruud Van Nistelrooy, a main reason why I got 17-3 this weekend with the goals that he scored. But that whole thing comes for us winning the ball back, playing that quick direct passing, getting in behind our opponent's fullbacks, and then penetrating those gaps with our forwards. On to our second goal now, and our opponent has equalised. I have to stress this was quite literally the very first game I was testing these tactics out, but this is a prime example of how this system can work. We get the ball in here, we feed it around initially, and then we're looking to exploit. Play it into Beckham, one of our passers, and you see already that Scott is out in the wide areas. She then brings it back inside to Pirlo. Pirlo then with the switch of play with his long pass, plays it out to Risa, and let me just stop it there. And you can already see exactly what has developed. Risa has been able to get outside of our opponent's fullbacks, and then look at our shape. Mostovoy, one of our 2 cams, he's penetrating the space between Hakimi and company. Al-Jaber is penetrating the space between company and Van Dijk. Van Nistelrooy is penetrating the space between Varane and Theo Hernandez. And Alex Scott is even further off at the top of the screen in acres of space on her own. We've actually managed to create a situation where we are in all of the gaps between their 5 at the back, and then this is what happens. Risa carries on down the line, the space is there, he's got the ball in the area, he plays the ball in, and Al-Jaber just has a comfortable header into the back of the net. Because of how effective this tactic was, our opponent actually switched formations to a 4-back in the second half. We then transitioned back into our usual 4-3-3 and were able to take the win. Now, if you guys want to watch the full matches, what I will do is in the actual stream, I will put timestamps of when these clips are and when the matches are where I played 4-2-2. So I'll put a link to the actual stream here, and then you guys will be able to click on that video, and then in the pinned comment of that video, I will have timestamps as to what games I actually played 4-2-2 in. Into the second game, and in this setup, our opponent didn't have their fullbacks going forward. They were just a flat back 5 the whole game. So it's then on us to create the opportunities. You see here, we feed it into our strikers. There's the space on the overlap for Alex Scott, creating the space for Dalglish, who should score, but sadly hits the post. However, just a few moments later, we win the ball back again. We try and feed it round one side and it doesn't happen. We play it back to our CDMs, again looking to play that space, get Alex Scott in behind our opponent's fullbacks, making that 6-on-5 attack into Dalglish again, and this time he is able to finish. And like I said, this is literally the second time I was ever using this tactic, and it was already proving how useful it can be. And now for our final game, you'll see that we win the ball back with Alex Scott in the midfield. She then immediately tries to spring the trap. Unfortunately, it is a little bit lucky, but we get Beckham, our right cam, in behind Furlan Mendy. We then try and penetrate those runs again, get Hernandez inside, and I have the composers just wait for Pirlo to drop into that little bit of space and get the early goal. Again, it's just all about patience and, like I say, waiting for those opportunities, because with our shape the way it is, those gaps are just going to keep appearing in our opposition back line. And now finally, 2 clips from a game of division rivals from last night. You can see we're playing against a full meta rat with the likes of Rooney and Hullet and Eto'o and Vidic and all sorts. You see Forlan pick the ball up here, play it out to Alex Scott. She's got the overload in the wide area around the 5 at the back, feeds it into Hernandez, little give and go with Forlan, once again penetrating those spaces in between the back line, and it's 1-0. And then not long after, we pinch the ball back again. Our opponent just immediately starts panicking as you see all of our players running forward immediately. He doesn't know who to cover. Does he cover the passer? Does he cover Risa? Forlan's made the run in between the centre-back and full-back. And look at the space as he panics with his goalkeeper. We get it with Hernandez. Another little bit of skill, a little bit of brilliance, and it's 2-0. And it's far too much for our opponent as the 4-2-2 absolutely pulls them apart. But that's how these tactics work. They are very high risk. You are going to concede goals at times, and how you deal with that, again, I would thoroughly recommend watching the matches I actually played from the stream, watching those full matches, just to get a better understanding of how it works, both offensively and defensively. But that is going to be it for today's video. Let me know down in the comment section if you're going to be giving these tactics a go, and let me know what other types of tutorials or potential tactics videos you would like to see from me in the future. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you very soon.